Okay, today we're going to look at 4F, which is the slope-intercept form of a linear equation. Now, this is also called the intercept-slope form, so either direction makes no difference. We typically find the intercept first, so that makes sense that it's first, but again, we'll go back and forth with that. So what we're looking at is just simply a way of looking at the equation that will organize it and make it easier to read and graph. So this is just a way of writing the equation to make graphing easier. So don't let it get too complicated here. We're just, again, looking at a way of writing out the equation so that it makes it easier to graph given the information. Now, the form is easy, and you've seen it lots of times. Y equals mx plus c. And the first thing I want to do is just kind of talk about what each piece of that means. Now, of course, the y and the x are just the y and the x values that you get when you're solving an equation. But it's the m and the c we need to talk about. We've talked about n before. M is the slope, or the gradient. And always remember, I'm going to keep throwing this word in there for you, change, because when you think of slope, that's the change. And c is the y value of the y-intercept. Now the y-intercept is simply where the line crosses the y-axis. Now again, remember that many of these graphs only have that first quadrant being used, so it doesn't look like it crosses it, but it's where it touches it, which is the same thing. It's where you're touching that y-axis. So those are the pieces that you're going to use in order to be able to graph these. But in order to use these pieces, we need to first talk about putting the equation in the correct form and then how to do piece by piece. So let's just talk about the steps. Sorry. To graph using the slope-intercept form. The first thing is that you have to make sure that it is indeed in slope-intercept form. And usually these equations are already set up for you, but that's not always going to be the case. Remember, they're going to make it a little more difficult each time. So the first thing you want to do is solve the equation for y. Now remember, when we did this with the simple interest formula, we were moving things around. So you're doing the same exact thing here. We need to get that y completely by itself on one side. And remember, to do that, you're going to do the opposite. So you might have to add or subtract. You might have to divide if there's a coefficient for y. Whatever you need to do to get that y completely on one side by itself. If you need to go back and review some of those steps, then do so. Second, we're going to plot the c value, so if it's 4, 5, 9, whatever, on the y-axis. It's simply a matter of putting a dot wherever that is, right on the y-axis. There's no math involved there. Okay. Then comes the only part where you have to actually do any math other than moving around your equation, and that math is going to be counting from the y-intercept. Now be careful here, because usually you go back to the origin to graph, but this time, using this particular process, you're going to be counting from the y-intercept. from the y-intercept, count m as rise over run. Okay, and plot that point wherever you land. So let's say it's 2, then that means 2 over 1. So you're going to go up 2 units and then to the right 1 unit. So if it doesn't already look like a fraction, then make it look like a fraction by putting it over a 1, right? Now, let me warn you here to watch the signs, because if you have a negative value, that means you're not going up, but you're going down. Or you're not going to the right, you're going to the left. So watch for the signs. Now, so keep those in mind as you go. Fourth step, draw a line through those points. So you'll have 2 points on your graph. You'll have the y-intercept, and then you'll have the new point that you got from counting out the rise over run. You're just going to draw a line through those points, but make sure that you go from edge to edge. Because remember, these things go infinitely, not just starting and stopping at your points. And then finally, something that we often forget to do is to label the graph. And the name of the graph is actually the equation. So you'll put the equation next to the line somewhere so that we know that the line that you've drawn is the line of that particular equation. And that's it. Now they can, again, remember that the only complex situation is going to be if you have to solve the equation for y. That can get a little complicated, so you have to be very careful to make sure you're using the opposite operation to do that. And you need to watch those signs for both your c and your slope. Make sure that you're being very careful with your signs. Don't make sign errors that will cause your graph to be going in the wrong direction or be in the wrong place. So you have your homework assignments as listed, and that should take you through some of these and give you some practice. I'll see you next time.